the intro music. Yeah! Woo!
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Star Trek Fleet Commanders, whenever you're watching this video. Today we're going to cover T'Pol and Trip, and as you can see, I actually have them both on ships right now. So besides them, if you haven't seen Star Trek Enterprise, of course, I recommend you go do it. But besides giving us arguably the steamiest shower scene in Star Trek history, do they have any value in Star Trek Fleet Command, our game? If you haven't watched the episode, well, go watch it. It's spicy. Also a little bit forced. But anyway, who needs to talk about writing from Star Trek Enterprise? We're going to talk about T'Pol, Trip here in the game, what value they might give to you or have for you, and whether or not you should go after them. So to do that, we're going to start with reviewing their actual abilities. We'll start with Trip Tucker. Now, neither of these officers have a captain's ability, and I know there are a lot of players out there who talk a lot about how any epic officer should have a captain's ability. I understand that logic. I personally have no issue with it as long as the abilities themselves are very, very valuable. But that's kind of like where we might run into an issue with Trip Tucker. So things blow up when you take damage from a hostile or another player. Trip Tucker decreases your opponent's critical damage by 50% for 2 rounds, can stack, does not work versus armadas or assaults, only players or hostiles. So reds, and technically that would include your accused trial hostiles. Below deck ability is Hand in the Cookie Jar, increases the amount of resources you get from destroying Herodian and Species 8472 hostiles. Now, many of you will have wanted that to be an anti-Xindi ability, and I can definitely see the logic behind there, and I'm not going to argue against it. But it is what it is. And then T'Pol, and we will come back to these, but move very quickly. Threats are illogical. T'Pol increases protected cargo by 130%. Again, this is an officer ability, not a captain's ability. And below deck, Vulcan hydraulics. T'Pol increases ore mining speed by 80%. Many of you may be getting a little annoyed that T'Pol was relegated to a mining. I will go ahead and say that if you watch Star Trek Enterprise, you learn about her history. The only Vulcan science ship, or only Vulcan ship, in fact, she served on, was on a ship that mined. Not ore or anything, but y'all, again, go watch Star Trek Enterprise. Although, obviously, she was with Vulcan. Anyway, I get it. Why they have their abilities, you have to take that up with Scopely. But anyway, here, trying to justify at least the T'Pol one. I can kind of get the T'Pol one, but the Trip one's a little weird. So let's talk about where I have them and why I have them. So T'Pol, start with the rare, kind of the easiest one for me to explain because I immediately threw her onto my second protected cargo crew. And what that ended up giving me is 3 officers that all give me protected cargo boosting and more than I would get just by using Quark with Synergy. So for those that don't know, Quark actually gives you a bonus to protected cargo. Natively, it's 90%. And if you have, one on the side, it's like a plus 15%. Or I can throw on T'Pol, which gives me at tier 2 a 130% increase. Now, don't worry, we'll show you the full amounts as we go back to the screen in a second. Then I have officer right here, 2 of 11, which is giving me a 50% boost at his particular tier. Obviously, officer abilities increase when you tier them up. So the main thing I'm getting is I'm getting another set of protected cargo, which will be really important. The reason I have the Meridian up as an example, because I did just increase the size of those nodes for isogen mining in the territory systems. So you're going to probably want to look at protected cargo, whether you're mining regular materials like ore, crystal, gas, or if you're doing isogen, protected cargo becomes very, very valuable to make sure that you get home with everything you need before a pirate like me comes by and takes it. Now, my main protected cargo crew is still this one. Why is it this one? So DuPont gives me a mining rate boost, but I'm not really necessarily worried about DuPont. I don't really care about a captain's ability, but it's fine. Below deck ability, though, is increasing my protected cargo by 150%, again, relative to the level of the officer. I've got T'Pring, the classic that you actually get at the very beginning of the game, gives me a 300% boost, and then 3 of 11 giving me 350. So this is my primary protected cargo crew, meaning I get the most from this set, and this puts my protected cargo at 370-ish, whereas over on here, I'm at 260. So obviously the other one has more because bigger numbers, bigger percentages, and there are also researches that can help this ship get more protected cargo. The way that you're going to find the initial value of T'Pol is going to be this ability right here, more protected cargo, especially if you don't have all the officers unlocked that maybe I have on this particular account. So getting her allows you to have more opportunities to save those things that you need, whether you're talking about being on a cavort, for example. If you're in the 30s and you're playing with one of these miners, you see I've got protected cargo of 240,000 with the same crew, and that's letting you mine more without having to worry about it getting taken OPC, because generally, for the most part, 99.99% of players in this game, including pirates like me, ignore miners that are under protected cargo. But if they're OPC, overprotected cargo, we come and take them. So protected cargo officers protect you from pirates like me. It's like Allstate, but in the game. So that's how T'Pol works. And then you'll see that I did have Trip Tucker on a ship. What I actually had him in was as a below deck officer over on the Voyager. Simple, because I wanted the loot bonus for 8472 hostiles. That's it. Here's the tricky thing about Trip Tucker. Let's take a look at his screen again. The tricky thing about Trip Tucker is, honestly, the only way this ability would particularly be valuable, in my opinion, would probably be against armadas, but it is okay against hostiles. But you need a hostile that, one, has a lot of weapons and has pretty high critical runs. And a ship that comes to mind that does that, or a hostile ship that does that, would be, in fact, the Xindi. Yeah, the Xindi actually do that. Here's the Xindi firing pattern for those who haven't caught it. But at the same time, is at the time of the release of this video, without more Enterprise NX-01 officers coming, and there are more coming, probably, Captain Archer makes it into the game at some point, right? You got to. You don't have the captain of the series not come into the game, so it doesn't feel like a spoiler. It feels like an obvious they would add Captain Archer. So even then, you might see more value to it at that point. But as of now, don't really see a ton of value, especially at tier 1. Now, he does tier up and get a little bit beefier, as it tends to be with all of these officers. You will see them get stronger. Now, I'll put that on the screen now, thanks to stfc.space. You see starting off at 50%, which is where I currently have mine, but maxing out at 250%, which means that when it stacks, and technically more weapons can make this even bigger, you can start zeroing out the damage that a hostile deals, which again goes back to what those Xindis can do if they're hitting criticals on you, because they have a lot of weapons. Because it says when you take damage, which means this thing hits you 6 times in a round, means we activate it 6 times. Well, 6 times 50 is 300%. So the idea is valid. I wish it was against armadas, because you'd have Gala Gate all over again. Who remembers Free Gala? Type in the comment section down below if you're old enough to remember Free Gala. So good times, good times. So you can have a little bit of value here, but then you are requiring that hostile to have a very high critical chance before you can really take advantage of that ability being like super duper strong. Now, again, there are various hostiles throughout the game, and some of them do have high crit rates. We actually can go and see the early systems. So we do have those systems, but we'll take a look at this beginner one, because you don't have to worry about the deep space look, and take a look at this Xindi Scout. If you click the little I button, you can actually see their critical chance, and it's only 10%. So you don't have a ton of chance of being hit by a critical. So then you're talking about Trip Tucker really just being for synergy for whoever comes along that's anti-Xindi. And we assume an anti-Xindi officer will come at some point. It's just a logical next step in how Star Trek Fleet Command plays their game. So for now, the only real value I see in Trip Tucker is in his below deck ability. And even with somebody else coming out, I don't see a ton of value in Trip as an epic. He's kind of rare. He's a rare with a purple skin, which means a purple price tag. But you do have immediate value from both, just maybe not like immense value. And to give you the numbers on how T'Pol works out, here you go right here. Again, stfc.space. Starting at 70%, you see mine is at 130, maxing out at 350%, which, as you saw, is what my Borg T'Pring is at. And again, that is valuable. And then your mining speed right there down below. But again, don't really care about mining or that much in the 200%. It's whatever. It's an ability. It's a below deck ability that you can technically use and technically find an advantage for. Don't really necessarily see it very valuable. Protected cargo, though, I will say is very valuable in the game. And if you are a mid-level, which is a player in the upper 30s, 40s, low level, you're going to really like protected cargo. It's very valuable. If you're a high-level player, you probably don't care about T'Pol, besides the fact that she is just, one of the heartthrobs of Star Trek history. Again, arguably spiciest shower scene in all of Star Trek lore. Go watch Star Trek Enterprise if you haven't already. I've watched it multiple times. Urge you to as well. So besides, fighting for the, viewership to watch more Star Trek, here are your 2 officers, and let me know if you are using them at all. Again, I have used mine mostly for the Voyager so that I can get more of the loot, since Trip is apparently working for the future. and I use on my second protected cargo crew. Let me know if you're using them down in the comment section down below, and if this video helped you out. Wish I had more oomph to throw into you for these, but maybe the officers rolling out the rest of the arc will provide that for us. Live long and plunder. Stay safe with our Space Cowboys. Deuce, that's me. Make sure you get your OPC is OPC merch on the merch store, revdeuce.com. You can support us there, and we will catch you on the next Star Trek Fleet Command video, which is going to be every day. What we do here.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.